Probably the foremost being the specific dashboard that we've decided to implement. And it's something called the EdFi dashboard. And I think we'll show you to it in a little bit here. But basically what it does is it utilizes Nebraska data, your data from your schools to, as you can see, help you identify individual student needs, help you measure student progress, and refine your action plans with your student throughout the year. The idea is that it works in a real-time or as near to real-time format as you would like. So while some of you perhaps have been exposed to the data reporting system, which we've spent a good deal of time and effort and money updating and making more functional, one of the drawbacks for the DRS is that you have data, primarily accountability data in there, that's typically, by the time you get it, a year or so old. And so you may be looking at for your continuous improvement processes, how do we, what do we need to focus on? But where you're at today may be very different from where you were 8 months ago. So the idea of a dashboard is that you can have something in more real time and help you make decisions and actions if you're interested in a more effective way in that sense. Now, I want to point out that the dashboard that we're creating is an optional tool for school districts. So this is not tied to accountability. It's not tied to funding. It's not tied to any stick or any particular carrot other than the fact that you might be interested in using it and it may be of value to you. So it's optional for school districts right now. So I want to talk a little bit about this concept of a dashboard then, because it's not something that people are necessarily familiar with. Some people are, but not everyone. So what I'd like to do is introduce the concept of business intelligence. And maybe some of you are familiar with this, and I'm not a teacher by trade, so I'm not very good at this sort of things, but I will try to engage the classroom by asking, are you familiar with the idea of business intelligence, or sort of what that is, or maybe you've at least heard of the term? A lot of these kind of...
Is that an oxymoron?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of these terms are kind of floated around, that business intelligence and smart technology and all of this sort of thing. But anyway, I want to discuss that just a little bit because I think it's relevant here. We'd like to sort of morph that term into something called education intelligence. So depending on your perspective, you may see what you do as a business, you may see it as something larger or more important or different than that. So we changed the term to sort of call it education intelligence. And the idea is what we're trying to do is transform data into knowledge to help you in your decision making. And so that whole process of transforming data into knowledge, I was going to spend a little bit more time talking through that because it's interesting, but I'm not sure we have a lot of time to do all of that. But it's basically the difference of, for example, let's take your bank. If they tell you, if your bank, you could log into your bank account and they tell you $200. That's the only piece of information you have.
I'd be excited.
Yeah. You may be excited. You're making some assumptions about what that means, right? So the only thing that shows up on your screen is $200. Right. Well, what does that mean? That in and of itself is data. So we talk about data like it's special or fancy or magical or something, but data in and of itself is no different than that. It's $200 in that example. What happens is data becomes valuable or powerful for us when we can move it up the continuum of knowledge, if you will. So if we can take those individual data elements and learn something from them and make inferences that ultimately then become valuable to us. So for example, the bank account information, it may say $200. This gentleman says, I think that's great. So you're sort of making an assumption then that means something, right? It has some meaning or value to you. So what we're trying to do then with our data and ultimately with the dashboard is help you move that on the continuum to be able to say, instead of $200, I wrote a check for $200. but I also know that I have $100 in my account, right? So then you have some relative information. So the moving a little bit higher on that continuum of knowledge would be understanding that, well, my check is going to bounce, right? And that's a problem for me. So ultimately, then what you're able to do is learn from that and figure out, I ought not write a check for $200 when I have $100 in my account, or I ought not have $200 worth of expenses if I don't have that much money, right? So ultimately, you get to a place of wisdom, right, at the end of that. So you know how to act, you know how to function or lead your life or teach or whatever it might be because of how you've transformed the value of that data from $200 to something that's meaningful and can be interpreted and used. So it's the same thing in your classrooms, and this is what's happening in business and all sorts of industries and sectors, is that how do we take data, which we have so much of now, as Dean talked about, and make it more and more valuable to us to make decisions that can help our students be more successful. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're trying to do with this dashboard. It's rooted in this idea of business intelligence where we can inflate, if you will, the value of data to make it meaningful to us. And there's multiple steps in the education intelligence cycle. Basically, the key is you want to have accurate answers. If the dashboard is telling you things that just aren't true or accurate, it's really of no value to you. In fact, it can be harmful. You need to gain valuable insights. So, for example, I gave you the DRS example. The DRS is a great tool. It can be used for a lot of things. Again, one of the challenges is if the data is 9 months old or 8 months old, the value in my mind of that data or information is diminished, as if you could have it relative to having it in a more real-time format. On-time information and then actionable conclusions. You're able to do something with that information. So the idea of the dashboard is to be able to give you a tool that can do that sort of thing, provide you that insight. But to be able to do that, we've got, and this is where I said at the beginning, this is really hard work and it's challenging, and there's a lot of wailing and gnashing of teeth behind the scenes. But to be able to do that, there's a lot of technical solutions that have to be made. And one of the key is sort of unlocking these data silos. So I think this graphic, which we borrowed from somebody else that we've worked with that have talked about this, explains this pretty well. We have all kinds of different data elements, right? I talked at the beginning about what is data. Data is $200. Data is 1 for male, 2 for female. That's how you code information. Data is whatever your course code is, whatever you want to do. And it's in all of these different silos. We have demographic information about our students. Right? What do they look like? Their grade information. We have state assessment information. You have all kinds of local assessments. You have much, much more data on your students and what happens for you in your school than we ever will. And that's good, I think. You know, you're talking about your unit tests and your homeworks and all of that. You have all of that data. It may not be necessarily in a digital format. It may be, but you have all kinds of information there. SPED has their own sort of data system with the different districts use different things, but the SRS system. You have behavioral information, discipline information, on and on and on and on and on. So the point is, if we're trying to get to a place where this data is valuable to you, we have to bring this data together in a meaningful way. And that's the idea of sort of unlocking these data silos. And so what we're trying to do with this dashboard is put all of this information into what we like to call a single pane of glass, if you will. So bring all of these pieces into one area that's comprehensive and meaningful to you. Right? So there are challenges with this. Right? We have multiple data stores. We have multiple warehouses. We also have multiple proprietary systems. So some of you may have PowerSchool, or some of you may have Infinite Campus or Schoolmaster, or on and on these student information systems that you have. And sometimes they work really well with other things you want to do, and sometimes they don't work well, and we need to export this data into here, or we really would like that data into there, and it becomes a nightmare. It's this interoperability challenge. There's no standard way to access data across systems oftentimes. So you may have special education information in SRS that may come from your student information system, but you want it to go back in, but it doesn't work very well, and it's these manual uploads, and it's a pain. These inconsistencies and latencies across data systems. So as I was saying, we have data show up on the State of the Schools report for your assessments. Well, maybe it doesn't actually get migrated into the data reporting system that you can do something else more effectively for a number of months, and it's the latency concept of this, right? And ultimately, these silos, all of these information in individual systems, which were created for good reason because people had a need, their ability to connect with pieces are challenging. It's hard. You know, I was thinking about this last night, and I thought, you know, you remember after 9/11 when everybody was saying, well, the problem is the systems don't communicate with each other. Or kind of like, well, what exactly does that mean? In a lot of ways, this is exactly what it is. You know, you have stuff in SRS, you have your student information system, you have maybe you do the check for learning, and you have information in there, and you've got to go to all of these other places to find that. You have different logins for every single piece, and the teachers don't have time to deal with that, or you too as principals. And so again, the idea of the dashboard is let's figure out a way to bring this all together under a single pane of glass to help it make sense, right? So that's what we're doing. So the proposed solution then is this more robust end-to-end data infrastructure that's based on something called the EdFi standard. And the EdFi standard, without getting overly technical, is a way of organizing those individual data elements in a way that they can kind of talk to each other a little bit easier. In so doing, we can unify the data from multiple sources and multiple systems. That allows us to begin to move down this education intelligence path. And we have an open standard for data that allows for APIs for other applications. And basically what that means is we will have our data then in a format where if you want to go out and work with a vendor because they have a great learning object repository of some kind, or great whatever application you can think about that might help you in your schools, something for your human resources work, for your accounting work, for whatever it might be. Because it's this sort of open standard format, those applications can easily plug into that for you. Right, so if you're going to go to work with SRS, it could sort of have an easy plug-in to that. That would be the idea. So we have a series of pilot districts that have come on to help us with this project. These are the brave few that decided that they wanted to be early adopters and help us figure out what this dashboard would look like, how it would operate, etc. So you can see that we have sort of a cluster of folks up here in Northeast Nebraska, which is great because they're great to work with. But we have 9 pilot districts right now, ranging the gamut in size, really even geographic location in some sense. A couple of your schools here, I think, are involved. Bancroft and
just Bancroft.
Maybe Bancroft is the only one, right? But we have schools ranging in size from Omaha to, you know, Bancroft or Neely or whoever else. So we have a pretty good range there. They have been on board with us for a few months now, and we're very pleased to have them with us. I also want to point out to you sort of then the bigger scope, which is the EdFi community, or other states that are beginning to move down this EdFi route. So EdFi is the standard that we use to put this data dashboard together. And there's a lot of other states that have begun to adopt this standard and use the dashboard. You can see the states in blue have already adopted the standard or signed the license for the standard. Those that are kind of pink are in licensing right now. So essentially what that means is we have about 50 million students that are operating in systems covered by EdFi and about a little over 3 million teachers. So what are we doing with the plan for this dashboard? How is it coming together? Without getting sort of overly mired in the details that you may or may not care about, basically the idea is to have a prototype available and working for those pilot districts next school year. And so we're working right now through all the technical pieces to make that happen. They're getting data migrated in certain formats. We're building the security pieces behind the scene. And that's sort of our working timeline. The idea would be that they would then pilot it for the first semester of next school year. And if we can show some success and they think it's valuable, which I hope it will be, we can then begin to offer it to the rest of the school districts that are interested, starting later next year or the year after. So that's sort of where we're at. Some of the discussions that you might be interested in on this is we're working very closely with the student information system vendors, because one of the keys is being able to get that information out of your information system into the dashboard. So to make the dashboard operate in relatively real time, the point is that most of the data is not supplied by the Department of Education or from our warehouses, but it comes from you and your district. So it's your system, that feeds your particular dashboard. So to be able to do that, most of that information resides in your SIS. Some of it is in other places like SRS and other areas, but most of it resides in your SIS. And some of it resides in the State Department stuff as well, systems as well. So we are working with those information system vendors for them to create a solution. So that data is easily transferable from your information system into the dashboard. The degree to which that can be seamless and not an issue and not cause hiccups will significantly increase the value and the usability of the dashboard. And so we are glad to announce that the folks from Power School, the Pearson, that's the Pearson, yeah, Power School have agreed to come up with the technical solution for that. And so for those of our pilot districts that are using Power School, we expect that's going to be an easy transition, and they have agreed to maintain that solution over the sort of life of their information system. And so as they come up with new upgrades and updates and whatever else versions, it can sort of continue to work, which is really a key to make this thing kind of work financially. If we have to create all of those extracts, it becomes very expensive and problematic. So Infinite Campus folks have expressed an interest in doing so as well as the schoolmaster. And those are our three largest information system vendors in the state. But we will, once we're done with the pilot, then begin to have those conversations with other vendors too. So,
if we're currently using Viewpoint as our data warehouse in our district, purchase that, will it go into this system?
Is that a dashboard application?
Yes, it's like a dashboard. They started, I think the district decided to do that because you didn't know how long it would be before dashboard would get started.
Yeah, that's a good question, and my inclination would be to say no. But
all the time we spent putting all that data into Viewpoint is going to be, won't be linked with this.
Right, so my hunch is, and I don't know all the details about your system, so this is just a guess. My hunch is what happens is this dashboard is a way to graphically and through different ways show you what your data is. That's exactly the idea of the dashboard. And so in some ways, I would think what we're creating would be kind of an alternative to that. The point with what we're creating is to make it seamless. So you don't have to manually upload and get something into there. But the minute you have something reflected in your information system or your online gradebook, it appears appropriately in your dashboard. And
I think that's how it works with Viewpoint, isn't it, Rick? It was just the upload at the beginning of it, getting all the data that was past data into it.
I haven't seen your system either, but I think it's very similar to the dashboard in terms of what it does. Now, the difference will be probably later on is there, what's the cost factor? That's what your superintendent will look at. Is it cheaper to continue with Viewpoint, or will the dashboard cost, and what will that cost be, and which is the better system for them?
Yeah, and you can make a determination on what you like, and ultimately it will be your call again, this is completely optional. We're just trying to create a solution that works well for the districts. But
I think we were supposed to be done by.
I'm sorry. I
Oh.
apologize.
No, You're good.
They're logged in, but we're not
Okay.
pressed for time.
Well, so kind of building from that notion, Matt, as you can tell, has spent a lot of time thinking through and ultimately working through the aspects of the dashboard implementation. We see the dashboard helping to do a number of things, helping fill a void for those districts that don't have something like this. But also, it's been brought to our attention by the 9 pilot districts that wouldn't it be great if we're already providing the data to the dashboard for this purpose, that you at NDE extract what you need when you need it for the reporting, and then we don't have to do any of those kind of eScholar template things that we have to do. And so we've got a part of the pilot that we're implementing that will test that concept and provide hopefully a futuristic opportunity for all data collections, whether districts use